You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for January 13th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where, if 20 years ago we'd thought to trademark expressions like both-siderisms and both-sidesing, we'd be rich as pirates by now. It's the Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
Happy podcast anniversary, Driftglass.
I know. How many years? Like 2 years
13.
now? 13. Oh, my God.
As you said, we're in our 13th season now.
We're in our 13th season. Just like every other soap opera, there'll be some amnesia. There'll be some people showing up who you thought were dead, but they're not dead.
Hidden twins.
Yeah. Lots of good stuff. A marriage, a baby, a murder. Who knows? And we're just talking about the House of Representatives at this point.
That's true. Yeah. I was going to say the villains are all in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, all those things I just said, they're just going to be George Santos over the next 3 months.
I was just saying to Driftglass.
Yes.
Before we started recording.
Uh-huh.
The Bible study that I do had passages today about forgiveness. And forgive as you have been forgiven and blah, blah, blah. And I just said to Driftglass, honey, I'm having a real, and his eyes went up because he thought I was talking about him. I'm having a real hard time. And it's like, what? Uh-oh. Figuring out how I'm ever going to forgive, quote unquote, Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. Well,
he's just, I don't see redeeming qualities in that person.
No.
And he just lies. And it's, but then you said that when they go through the Republican detector, right. If they have a shred of conscience in their pocket, they have to take it out before they can walk through.
It's like walking through a metal detector with a key in your pocket. Nope. You have a shred of conscience left. Nope. Put it in the basket, Kevin. Put it in the basket. Because you don't get to be the top of the racist shit pile that is the GOP by having anything left of your soul. No conscience left. Mm-hmm. And he's been gunning for that job since he was a young gun, and he knows exactly how much he has to sell out, which is everything, to the worst people in America to get that job.
We could call out Donald Trump on January 7th and then go down to Mar-a-Lago on January 10th. And
this is who they are.
Yeah.
And the part that, I always reflect on, well, first of all, forgiveness in my book, which is a much shorter version of the book you're referring to.
I understand.
Mine's the Irish version, which is, after 500 or 600 years, we'll talk about forgiveness. But, nobody holds a grudge, honestly. Well, there are 2 other cultures I can think of that hold grudges like we do. But it's the idea of forgiveness contingent on changing your fucking behavior.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If you're in a car accident with somebody and it's, it's their fault and they're like, after a while, you kind of get it through your head that, these things happen, accidents happen, unless they're malicious or whatever, you can forgive them because these things happen to people. But if this is a person who's driving down the street, hitting people every day on purpose, and you're the one they hit today, first of all, it's not your right to forgive them.
That's true.
That's not your power. And secondly, they're going to go hit somebody tomorrow because that's who they are.
Right.
So I'm not interested in hearing anything about forgiveness for anyone until I see a change in behavior.
Especially to the extent that they promote white supremacy. Yeah. And, that's not my job. Definitely not my job to forgive the Republican Party for that. No way.
No. Yeah. And that's where I get up on my hind legs about our Never Trump allies.
Yeah.
Who have taken it upon themselves to forgive lots of awful people who do not deserve it on behalf of, everybody. Yeah. That sort of my statement that, I've decided that Chris Christie can be let back into the circle of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Who the fuck are you? You're the guy who built that monster. The people who get to forgive are the people who, well, this is what we talked about on the George Wallace podcast, which, by the way, is up and running. The people
we have we have 2 actually up. Joe Scarborough.
Yes, we do.
And George Wallace. This are up already.
Yeah.
At our website and wherever you get your podcasts.
And the monumental 22-part David Brooks warm-up
is up.
podcast.
Yeah, that's five episodes. But and then next week we're doing going a little more local,
we're
going to do a Chicago story about Harold Washington.
Yeah.
And we rehearsed that yesterday, and it's a really good show. I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, and the lessons that many people should have learned from Harold Washington.
Certain people who were elected as president should have learned about Republicans and racism and what happens when you try to change things.
Right.
Yes.
And especially when the people who tell you, I'm a racist and I'm here to destroy you.
Right.
Are to your face. And no, fuck you. I'm not going to. No, every time you turn the other cheek, I'm going to, take a punch at it. At some point, you run out of cheeks, as the man said.
Yeah.
But in the George Wallace episode, we did talk briefly about the fact that people who forgave George Wallace were Black Alabamians.
Right.
And
right.
That's their right. He's the one who harmed them. And if they chose in the goodness of their heart at the end of his life to forgive him, that's fine. I don't have any grudge about that. That's entirely within their remit. But his legacy isn't that. His legacy is destroying people for political gain, playing racism to the hilt, using any dirty trick you can lay your hands on to acquire power for power's sake. That's his actual legacy, and that's what the podcast is.
Well,
really.
And I'm not sure whether it was self-awareness or actual repentance that made George Wallace say at the end of his life, I do not want a movie made of my life. And he made that clear. I don't want anyone to make a movie of my life because what I did was wrong and what happened and is not who I am now. I'm a born again Christian. Well, regardless of what his motive was for that, that indicates a turnaround from who he was in 1968.
Yeah. Well, it's also the Lee Atwater question, which is at the end of his life when he find out he has weeks to live.
Yep.
And he repents of his sins. Is that because holy shit, I know what I did and I can't get into heaven without saying I'm sorry.
I'm in it for me to make sure I can pass through the pearly gates or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
But you left the destructive power of all the forces you unleashed in your wake, and they're the ones we're all living with today. So,
And Driftglass, we don't talk too much in this week's episode about this whole BS with the Biden documents versus the Trump documents. Nope. Stephen Colbert, of all people, did a really good job of outlining the differences between these two issues, as did Karl Rove on Fox News.
Yeah, I saw his little whiteboard. And
he said, look, this is not the same. These are not the same things. But it does point to the fact that anytime there is a both-siderist needle brought out for the media, they treat it like heroin.
Oh, they do. Thank God. Oh,
yeah, thank God I'm going to get my hit.
Yeah,
Let me tie off this vein here.
They are Shirley MacLaine in terms of endearment going, give me the shot. Give me the shot. They can't live without some both sides do it bullshit to hang their career on. Yeah. Because if it's just Republicans who are monsters, they're all out of work.
Yep. Diamond of Diamond and Silk passed away this week. And I bring that up not to eulogize her, but to remember that back in 2019, Diamond and Silk sent me a cease and desist letter, me personally.
Yeah.
And I pulled that out of the archives because it's nice to remember.
You took it from the frame that you have above your desk.
Yes, the frame I have above my bed. That's it. No. This is at the Crooks and Liars archives because, of course, I would write this up. And they did write to me as in my role as an employee of Crooks and Liars. So I thought I would read this letter that they wrote to me back in August 27th, 2019. Mm-hmm. The letter across the top says, cease and desist letter for defamation of character and libeling.
Oh, no.
Yes. Attention Francis Langham, Crooks and Liars blogger. Reference slanderous article referencing Diamond and Silk. Dear Francis Langham, Crooks and Liars administrator, it has come to our attention that Crooks and Liars blogger Francis Langham have made untruthful and deceptive statements about Diamond and Silk and or the Diamond &Silk brand that are both false and misleading. The besmirch statements constitute slander or libel if in writing.
Somebody went to a middle grade law school. Good for them.
since they defame the name and reputation of the Diamond and Silk brand.
Uh-huh.
We demand that you immediately cease and desist from deliberately and maliciously making these false and slanderous or libelous statements, which include, but are not limited to the following. And then they quote from my article, in which I say, Silk actually said this, and then I quote her.
Oh, no. Wait a minute. Isn't that Newt Gingrich?
Yeah, exactly.
Echo Newt Gingrich. Anybody who quotes me in context saying what I said
from
now.
Friday on Monday is guilty of lying about me. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You, Crooks and Liars blogger Francis Langham, have 24 hours to remove and delete this article and any related videos or pictures via Twitter, Facebook post, URL, social media sites, emails, and any other sources used to circulate and spread misleading, unverified, and falsified information as it pertains to Diamond and Silk and the Diamond and Silk brand, etc. If you continue to deliberately and maliciously create, fabricate, and display slanderous statements and videos, again, the video was Diamond and Silk on Fox and Friends.
Yeah.
It was not edited. It was not altered in any way. The start point and the end point is exactly what was aired on Fox and Friends.
How dare you quote me in context?
Our team will have no choice but to take the appropriate legal steps to protect the reputation of the Diamond and Silk and the Diamond and Silk brand, including seeking relief in a court of law for monetary damages.
Wow, they have a team. Great.
This notice is not to be made public via online sources or any other sources in any manner.
Oh, crap.
This notice serves as your final notice to cease and desist. Sincerely, Diamond and Silk legal team. And so here is what I wrote. I'm so sorry that it took us a month to make public via online sources or any other sources in any manner this delightful exercise in pretend lawyering. It took us almost a month to stop laughing. Once I caught my breath, I immediately added crafter of besmirch statements to my curriculum vitae. Winning! The post in question, which has, spoiler, not been taken down, shows the video of Diamond and Silk on Fox and Friends and comments on the content of their speech. Diamond and Silk, sadly, are public figures, appearing on a cable news show for the purpose of promoting their brand. This kind of case, quote unquote, has already been decided by the Supreme Court. New York Times Company versus Sullivan in 1964 ruled that the freedom of speech protections in the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution restrict the ability of American public officials to sue for defamation. The Supreme Court has extended its higher legal standard for defamation to all public figures. The fact that Diamond and Silk themselves admit in their cease and desist letter that they are a brand will make it very, very difficult for them to claim that they are not public figures under the law. Also, being regulars on Fox and Friends might hurt their case a little. I have already given Diamond and Silk more and better legal advice than the so-called legal team that allegedly typed the PDF document emailed to the wrong address. My gift to you, Diamond and Silk. Then there's the little fact that Crooks and Liars posts videos of people saying things and then comments on that video. The post, which Diamond and Silk's, quote, legal team, unquote, wants us to take down, is exactly that format. A video, Diamond and Silk saying stuff on that video. My comment and opinion about what they said. To reiterate, I think they enabled Trump's racism by defending him on Fox. One important note about our coverage of Diamond and Silk. I am a white woman. I don't have the right as a white person to decide or declare that Diamond and Silk are in any way traitors to their race. I always try to include tweets from people of color concerning the behavior of Diamond and Silk. There is a very good on-topic article recommended on the subject from Clifford Thompson, Dear White People, Stop Using the Term Uncle Tom. I have never myself referred to Diamond and Silk in that manner. I have in the past included tweets from people of color leveling criticisms along those lines. Finally, the letter demands that we not make their letter public via online sources. Oops!
Mm-hmm.
Hey, maybe they can ask a judge to keep his dismissal of their case private as well. Ask your legal team, Diamond and Silk. And then an update, an alert reader Googled the address of their legal team, and it's a quick pack and ship mailbox place in a strip mall.
Yeah, right next
Saul Goodman, eat your heart out.
Yeah, right next to Four Seasons Total Landscaping.
Total Landscaping,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I bring some of this up because it turns out that Silk today is threatening to sue anyone who tweets that her sister passed away from COVID. Well, I don't know if she did or not. That people are tweeting that, and she is going and finding those tweets and threatening to sue people who say that. She's also threatening to sue people who say that she was fired from Fox over spreading COVID disinformation. She was fired. She and her sister were fired from Fox Nation, not Fox. So that there is a clarification there. It's
a separate country altogether, different flag.
We do have evidence, though. We do have evidence that Diamond and Silk were forced to delete tweets back in the days when Twitter was actually trying to battle COVID disinformation. They were forced to delete tweets that did contain COVID disinformation. So this is timely, given that Silk is not only fundraising after her sister passed away, in her memory, but she's also threatening to sue everybody. So there you go.
Well, damn, that little bit of history, is now documented in our podcasts for the ages and
for posterity.
For posterity, because not everybody has a cease and desist letter from Diamond and Silk.
Not everybody is a crafter of besmirch statements, Driftglass.
Right.
Your wife is.
I honest to God, you were a lawyer in a previous life, because that is just a delightful letter you sent to them. Wasn't hostile, just saying, if you keep this up, I'm going to own your ass. And I'm trying to give you good advice here. It's up to you to take it or not.
You can't besmirch a brand that is being promoted in a video that the person that you're threatening to sue with cease and desist is actually promoting itself by putting it on their website.
Yeah, no. But it's just that for future generations is a level of ridiculousness that we were all kind of reduced to, because these were, the official side ladies of the Trump administration.
Oh,
President of the United States.
CPAC all the time.
These people were...
we haven't even gotten into, Matt Schlapp yet.
No.
But Matt Schlapp brought Diamond and Silk onto the CPAC stage all the time.
Yeah. Well, I at some point, way down this podcast towards the end, we'll get to the part where David Brooks and Brett Stevens sit on the porch, sipping whiskey, reminiscing about the good old days of CPAC.
When there wasn't a Diamond and Silk there.
When everything was wonderful and conservatism was great. But for now, we are living in the present. And just as a note, this is something we pulled from the We Told You So files.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, House Republicans are gearing up to pass anti-abortion bills. And I know that no fair remembering stuff is an unfair standard to hold Republicans to, but it really was like a minute ago when they discovered that women really, really don't like having their rights taken away from them, by antebellum fascists. And they backpedaled like crazy by promising that, all they were doing was handing the issue back to the states where it could be properly legislated. Turns out they were lying, because among the first bills Republicans said they would pass, this is somewhere between gutting the IRS and a witch hunt against the January 6th committee, are 2 abortion bills and a promise to do even more. So Republicans lied to you, America. I know you're shocked. Lay down, put a cold cloth on your head. It's terribly shocking, but they lied to you about abortion again.
And Nancy Mace actually came on. She's someone who from North Carolina who, may be at risk of being ousted.
Yeah, she's the one.
Over the abortion issue. And she said, I thought we were going to learn something from the midterms, and apparently we didn't. So she was upset about it. Yeah. Nancy Mace is also the one who spray painted her own house with anti-Nancy Mace graffiti and made it look like she was a victim.
Yeah, they're all horrible.
So it just there is no redeeming features on these people. I've looked.
Here's the thing. They're all 99.9% garbage people, but in each case there's probably a 0.1% thing that we can agree on. And do not judge them by the 0.1% of things that make them look like a civilized human being. They're not. That one thing does not overshadow all the rest of their horrible, horrible fascist personality.
Some stories, Driftglass, we can go to straight news sources and report. But some you really have to go to Wonkette.
Yeah.
You just can't report these without the edge that satirical websites bring to the story. And this is one where the Proud Boys are on trial for sedition in the District of Columbia. And their lawyer got on his hind legs and angry that the prosecution was disqualifying too many white jurors and not allowing enough white people to be on the jury.
Oh my God. Reverse racism.
Yeah. As Wonka said, can't a white man catch a break in this town? It's a crying shame.
Apparently not. The man has got me down.
Yeah. And so prosecutors countered, I'm reading from Wonkette, prosecutors countered that they had perfectly legitimate reasons for ditching the prospective panelists. Quote, one, U.S. Attorney Jason McCullough said, indicated he might be sympathetic to the defendant's views on Antifa. There was also a Catholic priest who they decided should not be on the jury because he would bring his line of work into the jury room, and defense attorneys might seek to exploit his occupation by appealing to his sense of redemption. Yes, okay. And that was good enough for Judge Timothy Kelly, who is, in so many of these cases we are finding, he's a Trump appointee. And the judge said, there are still white people on the jury, counsel, calm down. Wonkette concludes, if you don't want to face a jury that has black people, don't come to the District of Columbia and commit crimes.
Yeah, there's a thought. There's a great idea.
And finally, elsewhere in the case, attorney Norm Pattis was disqualified from representing defendant Joe Biggs after getting suspended from the practice of law in Connecticut. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Pattis defended Alex Jones in the Connecticut Sandy Hook defamation suit.
God, he's that guy. Okay.
Yeah. And now, after utterly failing to comply with a protective order regarding the plaintiff's confidential medical records, he's finding out that there's something worse than losing $1 billion on live TV. So, it's not going so good for those Proud Boys in the D.C. courtroom.
So this was the lawyer that gave Alex Jones' phone to the prosecution,
exactly,
without checking it, and
left it there until the right to ask for it back expired.
Yeah, and they just okay. Thank you very much.
It's day 13. We get to open it and keep it now. Yeah.
Well, this is I guess all the good lawyers are gone. They're doing other things because really, every time you hear about a lawyer on that side of the aisle, they're just a bumpkin. They're just a moron. They get everything wrong and they scream about it. They jump up and down, and half of them are lawyers. And I realize perhaps there are too many lawyers in this country and not enough doctors and school teachers and social workers. And we need to fix that. Not today, but this is what you get when you reach the bottom of the legal barrel. Speaking of the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a creature named Alyssa Farah Griffin today.
Yeah.
And in the larger context of there is something going on the right, and I think we know what is causing it, to make them, all of them, in their own special little ways, desperately trying to rewrite their own history.
Mm-hmm.
They can feel, I think, the judgment of the book of history closing on their racist ass. And they're all trying to find a way to explain why they weren't there, or wasn't their fault, or somebody made them do it, or they were just holding the racism for some other older boy, and it wasn't theirs. They just had it in their car when the cops pulled them over. And Alyssa Farah Griffin has this long Twitter thread, which I won't bore you with, but it starts with her saying, for those of you who don't know, I was the Freedom Caucus communications director around its founding. I was young, ideological, and loved to fight. I truly believe the group was invested in empowering the rank and file members to make it a truly representative body. Now, here's the thing. The Freedom Caucus wasn't chartered in like 1967.
Right.
It came into existence in 2015. That is not very long ago. And her argument is, I was young. I didn't know any better. What was I thinking? Now, and she goes on to say how this noble experiment in grassroots organizing was besmirched and despoiled and dragged down to some horrible level by the awful people who, are a member of the Freedom Caucus. And the first thing I wanted to know was, what is this? What does she do? How did she get into this position? And in 2010, I learned she landed a 1-year position as the associate producer on the Laura Ingraham Show. And after that, she made her living writing articles for the right-wing nutjob website WorldNet Daily.
Oh, Lord.
Where she served as their special Washington correspondent. And then she jumped into the middle of the Freedom Caucus, and she truly believed it was a noble effort. And they wanted to be taken seriously. They didn't even let Louis Gohmert in for a minute. So, they were serious. And then she goes in this long history of what happened and who shot John and what went on where. Like, wow, what happened after that? Well, here's the thing. She went directly from the Freedom Caucus to press secretary to Mike Pence. And then she went to work for the Department of Defense. And she was, at the end of her career in 2020, the third White House Director of Strategic Communications under Donald Trump. Her predecessor in that position was Mercedes Schlapp.
Uh-huh.
But now, at this very
She's not having a good week.
No, none of them are having good weeks. But the last thing that she says in her thing is viewpoints of these people that are hard to imagine 10 years ago, like openly rooting for against Ukraine and being insurrectionist and calling them political prisoners. What was once a worthy mission in the House has descended into a disgraceful display of hubris, fame-seeking, and simply burning down the institution to own the libs. McCarthy will live to regret empowering them. Them, those people over there who were all my friends until 2 fucking minutes ago.
Is she looking for a job on the Bulwark? Is that what she's looking for?
I think everyone's looking for a job somewhere. I think as Bulwark slowly takes over MSNBC, that will free up slots at the Bulwark for people to recycle their lives into that. But it is you can just stick a pin in any place in right-wing media at this point that is the crazy part. There's people like this, and you'll find people just saying, well, that was over 6 minutes ago. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just young and inexperienced and just was a carefree, youthful person, and I didn't know any better. And I was misled by terrible people. And the mantra that you'll hear repeated over and over again is it was all 2 years ago. It was all 5 years ago. It all began 6 years ago. I listened to MSNBC with half an ear these days because I don't pay any attention to what they're talking about because it's really, they're not our friends. But I'm always alert to Never Trumper going on there. And every time they get on there, it's up until 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, once Trump came along, they have repeated. And these are all, conservative radio veterans of 20, 30 years experience. They know what repetition does. And Charlie Sykes and his crew, every time they get on camera, repeat the same lie over and over and over and over and over again. That it was all in 2016 and beyond. It was just these last few years. It's been since Trump showed up. And they make sure that these people are not in the presence of anyone who will ever ask them anything about what happened before then. And occasionally they stumble into that and they get really uncomfortable. And that will bring us in a few moments to the subject of Mr. David Brooks. But for now, I wanted to let you know that rewriting history is now endemic on that side because nobody wants to be responsible for what has happened up until now and what is surely about to happen now that the lunatics are in charge of the House of Representatives.
There have been a lot of outrageous statements made this week, but Tucker Carlson took the cake. This week, Tucker Carlson decided to bring up Watergate.
Oh.
Of all things. And he said that Woodward Bernstein was a deep state sting on Nixon.
Really?
That's This is what Tucker Carlson said this week. The funniest part was Bernstein, formerly of the Washington Post, who literally participated in an FBI operation, not guessing, documented an FBI operation to drive a sitting, duly elected president from office. Carl Bernstein participated in that.
Yeah. Well, you have to keep rewriting history backwards.
Yeah, you do.
You just got to keep and never stop.
No.
Never stop. This is why it doesn't matter if this one sticks. The next one will be along tomorrow.
Right. And John Amato wrote this up, and his last line was, so Nixon's plumbers were just upset Republican voters.
Yeah. Well, they were just on a tour of the
Watergate Hotel. Yeah. Right.
They're just tourists. They walked in. They just wanted to check the place out. What's wrong with that? No, Tucker Carlson is the worst of the worst. If you had to pick one person who really has relished destroying democracy, it's Tucker Carlson, who is so hollow a man that he really has just tried on a number of personalities till he found one that gave him all the money and all the power he would ever want. And if that one happens to be a Nazi, well, that's fine. It doesn't bother him because Tucker Carlson doesn't have a conscience, and people without a conscience are not bothered by the horrible things they do. And this is the same guy who, remember, called the cops when 12 people with tambourines were protesting outside of his house, and wrote a whole thing about they broke my door and they tried to rush the place and they were out to get me. And the same guy who looked at, actual insurrection against the Capitol as, whatever. As long as the mob stays away from his house, Tucker Carlson's fine with all of this because it brings him money and it brings him power, and he doesn't care about anything other than that. However, Blue Gal,
yes,
there was a time. There was a time back in the old days when conservatism was glorious.
It was great, wasn't it?
Full of giants strode the earth, Blue Gal. Giants of men.
I want to make sure that we point out that you're talking about this because an alert reader asked you to.
Yeah. It might be time for me to publish another edition of my True Conservative magazine, a quarterly journal of self-regard, because alert reader Ken wrote to us saying, hoping to hear a rant about the latest David Brooks and Bret Stephens column. Yeah, they had one of those conversation columns in the New York Times, and I was real excited to hear about that. I would really like your perspective. I hardly know where to begin. There's so much wrong and distorted. Then again, maybe that's the idea. Save us from the reformed Trumpers. This column finally did it for me with those two. Yep. First of all, in the rare occasion that we mentioned Wonkette twice on this podcast, I got to say, they got there before I did.
They did.
They wrote a column entitled Bret Stephens and David Brooks had a pity party and nobody else came, which is very sad. But what Wonkette failed to do, and to be fair, only a certified expert Brooksologist is qualified to do.
I see.
Is compare the David Brooks conversation Wednesday with Stephens, etc., about conservatism and all things glorious, etc., and Brooks just 6 days earlier at his PBS gig.
Oh.
And that's the fun part, because all these people are suddenly discovering Newt Gingrich and the past and wondering where did conservatism go wrong? Blue Gal, the conservatism I joined, the Ronald Reagan conservatism, that was not a revolutionary insurgent movement. Fuck, it wasn't. They call it the Reagan Revolution for a reason, David, because Reagan was in it to tear everything down, rebuild the nation's politics and culture in the name of conservatism. It was a revolution. You participated in it. And for the last 30 years, David Brooks has been lying about the Republican Party. Every time. Lying every time. Every time he opened his mouth, column after column, for the last 25, 30 years, his position has been, I can't see what's directly in front of me. I don't know what's going on here. Denying the evidence of his senses in order to prettify the past on behalf of his political party. So, imagine, I gave about a tenth of my attention to the news hour conversation that was going on Friday. And he's droning on and on about whatever. And then I heard David Brooks say, I don't want to prettify the past. And I said, I'm sorry, what?
That's his whole career.
I kind of went, okay, now I have to listen to the whole frickin' thing.
Yeah.
And it was it was this remarkable, stuttering, dissociative, weird, convoluted acknowledgement that the past actually happened, but I didn't have any part of it, but I was a part of it. But it's this sort of as if seen from space. All these things happened. And he started all the way back with Father Coughlin.
You're kidding.
No. And I gotta say, it was something to hear. This is a paragraph straight out of the news hour, if you'll indulge me for just a moment. And to me, I don't want to prettify the past. There was Father Coughlin. There were nativists. There's been a lot of ugliness in American history. But I would say over the course of my lifetime, and frankly, my, at one time, alliance with the Republican Party, notice how awkward that sentence is.
Yeah.
It's like, I have to squeeze out the absolute minimal acknowledgement that I was part of this problem, but I really don't want to say it. But I'd rather burn my tongue out than say it. But I will. Yes, at one time, in the past, at some point, I was an ally of the Republican Party. There were a lot of doors they had to walk through that created what you might call a loss of moral knowledge. What was it?
Gosh.
The panic of Rush Limbaugh, a lot of what happened to the white Christian nationalists and the evangelical communities. There was on the radio, on TV, the rise of Tucker. And so if the standards of acceptable behavior went down, 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 the tolerance for violence went up, up, up. Cool. So there's this stuttering, halting, begrudging acknowledgement that he existed in the past and he had a job in the past and he witnessed these events and might have at some point interacted with them. But it was those people. It was Rush Limbaugh. David Brooks never he wrote like maybe 2 or 3 columns in his life about Rush Limbaugh. And the columns he wrote were poo-pooing the idea that Rush Limbaugh had any effect on voters.
Well, and you and I have recalled multiple times the time he said, I don't know what Rush Limbaugh says.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? And Newt Gingrich, who's he? And Tucker Carlson, some fringe guy. Anyway, so I'll repeat one sentence, and then I'll tell you the sentence I pulled from the Conversation article that made me laugh out loud. I will repeat the sentence from his PBS performance. But I would say, over the course of my lifetime, and frankly, my at one time alliance with the Republican Party. Okay, everybody got that? There'll be a quiz at the end of this podcast, so you better write it down. Now, as we have acknowledged before, because of the Beltway rule of David Brooks, sometimes the Brooks of yesterday giveth, and the Brooks of tomorrow taketh away. So this is David Brooks, 6 days later with Bret Stephens. Even in my red-hot youth, when I worked for Bill Buckley at the National Review, I didn't see myself as a Republican, just a conservative. I maintained a distance from political parties because I think it's always wrong for a writer to align too closely to a political party. That's the path of predictability and propagandism. And I just sat there going, why haven't you been struck by fucking lightning?
Yep.
I have stacks. I have millions of your words slandering liberals and slashing at liberals and destroying liberals and calling us un-American and sucking George W. Bush's dick on Main Street, column after column after column. And Democrats are always stupid and always parochial and always idiotic. And then, of course, when it turned out the left was right all along, David Brooks shifts to what? He shifts to, well, both sides are bad, you know. I mean, yeah, you have fascism on the right, but what about those speech codes on liberal campuses? You should really pay attention to those. And when the reek from the GOP filth gets so bad, you can't both sides it, what does David Brooks do? He remembers, sits on the porch, sipping whiskey, remembering the good old days of conservatism. Remember back when me and Adam Smith and Edmund Burke used to get drunk and play for hookers and so on. And he gets this sort of nostalgic, misty-eyed memory of a conservatism that never fucking existed. And then he prophesied that just around the corner, Blue Gal, just around the corner, there's going to come a day in the very near future when we're going to have this mighty conservative renaissance, and it's going to be great, and it's near at hand. And you know what? All the shut-ins and CEOs and college presidents who read this shit and believe it continue to think this guy's a fucking genius. So I just shook my head and go, yep, he hasn't learned a goddamn thing except when you're on PBS. And, the person sitting across from PBS is Jonathan Capehart. And Jonathan Capehart is pudding. Jonathan Capehart's not going to say, well, wait a minute, David, didn't you write this and this and this and this and this and this?
Didn't you write this shit 5 days ago?
Yeah. No, he's not going to say that because he wants to keep his job at PBS.
Yeah.
And Bret Stephens and he basically disagreed over how awesome conservatism was. But they're like, yeah, back in the 90s, there was the Newt Gingrich and things started to go bad. And yeah, I had lunch this one time with Laura Ingraham and Dinesh D'Souza, and I realized suddenly they didn't possess the same conservatism I did. Yeah, they weren't real true conservatives. They just hate liberals. They're not real conservatives. And then comes this long disquisition about what real conservatism is and how we're the good guys. And, we started this magazine called The Weekly Standard to give a highbrow kind of policy wonk veneer to the GOP. And the plan was that we come up with all the good ideas for conservatism, which amount to what? Destroying regulation, cutting taxes, and packing the court with judges. Those are your only fucking ideas. And abortion. That's it. That's conservatism. But Fox News was supposed to be the delivery system for those things. Rush Limbaugh and Fox News would popularize our brilliant ideas and get the voters to go along. But somewhere along the line, that stopped working real good. And they started thinking that they ran the place. I'm like, of course they ran the place. They're 90% of the voters base. You guys are sitting on the Upper West Side, completely divorced from your actual political party, thinking you can just issue orders to the Weekly Standard and through Bill Kristol, and the rest of the party will just do what you say. And you didn't want to know about the base. You didn't want to know what Rush Limbaugh was doing every goddamn day. You didn't want to know what Lee Atwater was doing to get George H.W. Bush elected. You didn't want to know what Karl Rove was doing. You wanted to sit up on your high throne, bitch about liberals hating America, and continue reaping the rewards of being an elite journalist. And now that all the chickens have come home to roost, you're sitting with Bret Stephens, sipping whiskey going, I wonder how this all happened. Isn't that weird? Isn't it strange how suddenly, he uses the word suddenly in the column, suddenly the party lost its mind. Like, you're all assholes. All of you. You're all terrible people, and you all have way too much influence in the media. And I would not have brought back Mr. Brooks to this podcast, but I was requested by an alert reader, and Wonkette beat me to it. So I felt my obligation to history was to let you know that David Brooks...
Your obligation on our 13th anniversary.
Yes.
What's a 13th anniversary show without a David Brooks rant from Driftglass?
Well, I hope that satisfied you, Ken, if that really is your medium.
Thank you, Ken. We appreciate you. We really do. All right, Driftglass, let's do a news roundup.
All right, fire away.
The Bidening continues. Kevin McCarthy won the prize that he has always wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin McCarthy was elected House Speaker on the 15th round of voting, which followed 4 days of defeats, a series of concessions to ultra-conservative Republicans, a confrontation with Matt Gaetz. I did like the tweets that said everybody knew Matt Gaetz wouldn't let this vote go all the way to 18.
Yeah.
The chairman of the Armed Services Committee being physically restrained from attacking Gaetz, and Trump calling 2 Republican lawmakers who refused to back McCarthy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Gaetz nominated Trump as Speaker of the House.
Yes.
And then wouldn't vote the way Trump wanted him to, allegedly wanted him to.
Got one vote. Well, I mean, these are just, they know they've got McCarthy by the balls.
Yeah.
They know they've got him hostage. And they're just, anything they want, they get.
Yep.
And what they want is going to be horrifying. There's just a little bit of evidence of it now. The kind of laws they're trying to pass. They're bragging about getting rid of the IRS enforcement arm, the 87,000 IRS employees who are there to replace people who are retiring and beef up the enforcement efforts because hundreds of billions of dollars every year go unpaid in taxes because there aren't enough people investigating the wealthy.
Yeah, and their bill adds to the deficit.
Right.
By multiple billions of dollars. Billions.
Mm-hmm. So expect the debt ceiling showdown in the summer is going to be terrible. It's going to be terrible.
And Driftglass, I just got to say, all of this, I think, is a distraction from Trump's taxes.
Yeah, well, all of it's a distraction from all the other things that are distraction.
Right. Right.
It's just it has become easier for me over the last 13 years podcasting and over the last almost 18 years blogging to just, everyone on that side is terrible. It's just I don't need to think in a great deal of granular detail about the specifics of the perfidy and corruption and lying and racism, because they're all part of the team. So it makes my life a little easier because I just, you're a Republican? Shh, I don't have to listen to another fucking word you have to say about anything. However, the New York Times still has New York Times stuff to do, and their headline this week captured everything wrong with the New York Times. Quote, Republicans prepare new rules, but fixing Congress isn't so easy.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, because that's what they're doing. They're trying to fix Congress in the sense that I guess you fix an animal or fix a horse by gelding it. I can't do it with the New York Times anymore. I can't with the people who say, well, the reporting's really good. Yes, it is. And they would have my full attention if they scraped off the scum that blocks out the sun on their op-ed page. If they get rid of these people who are access assholes or both-siderists, ride or die both-siderists, etc. But that pollution is part of their machine. And I don't want any part of it.
A Republican lawmaker whined about lacking clearance because of GOP. Wisconsin Representative Mike Gallagher complained that he couldn't meet with the Joint Chiefs because he doesn't have clearance. He doesn't mention that is his party's fault.
Why won't Obama lead, Blue Gal?
Why won't Obama lead? We keep asking.
Why won't Obama lead? This week, Senator Susan Collins, the concerned lady, highlighted the Auburn PAL Center. Quote, the Auburn PAL Center has been building brighter futures for local children for nearly a decade. I enjoyed speaking with city leaders about how a transformational $3 million grant will help expand after-school programs and provide new services for the community, unquote. For your information, that transformational $3 million grant came from the American Rescue Plan that Collins voted against.
House Republicans approved the formation of the Weaponization of the Federal Government Select Committee to investigate any federal agency for perceived wrongdoing against conservatives, including the FBI, IRS, and the intelligence community. The subcommittee, approved on a party line 221 to 211 vote and chaired by Jim Jordan, promised to probe ongoing criminal investigations at the Justice Department, despite the department's long-standing practice of not providing information about ongoing investigations. The panel also has authority to obtain highly classified information, typically only shared with the House Intelligence Committee. Oh, this is going to go great.
Yeah, this is going to be so bad. The next 6 stories in the news are as follows. Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden's laptop, Hunter Biden's bank activity reports, the bank activity reports of President Biden's brother James Biden, Hunter Biden's laptop, and the laptop of Hunter Biden.
House Republicans filed articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas because they disagree with his handling of immigration and the border.
Yeah, this is all they've got. George Santos refused to resign despite top New York Republican officials demanding that he step down over the multiple inquiries into his finances, campaign spending, and fabrications about his background. Chairman Joseph Cairo Jr. of the Nassau County Republican Committee said Santos's campaign was, quote, a campaign of deceit, lies, and fabrication, adding that Santos, quote, disgraced the House of Representatives, and we do not consider him one of our congresspeople. But he is, pal, but he very much is.
With one Republican joining the Democrats in unified opposition, House Republicans pushed through a rules package for the new Congress. The specifics of the huge concessions Kevin McCarthy made to 20 far-right lunatics in order to secure his job as Speaker remains unknown. But, by the way, Kevin McCarthy said that he was not in favor of Santos resigning until they'd proven that he did something wrong.
Yeah. Until the ethics committee he's busy gutting proves that he did something wrong. In an effort to both sides the 320 classified documents that Donald Trump stole and stashed at Mar-a-Lago, classified documents he lied about having and refused to turn over despite multiple requests and subpoenas, forcing the FBI to raid his shitty golf club and get them back. the House of Representatives requested a national security damage assessment of the 10 potentially classified documents found in Biden's private office from his time as vice president.
And again, it's heroin for the mainstream media.
Oh, yeah.
To have it both sides. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And again, the reason that they know there's classified documents at former Vice President Joe Biden's think tank is that they called them up and told them.
Yeah, the lawyers called up the archives and said, we have these, we want to get them back to you. And within 12 hours, the archives had them back. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Former Trump Organization finance chief Alan Weisselberg got 5 whole months in jail for multiple tax crimes he committed at the company over more than 15 years. And as my TV husband, Ellie Mistal, said, must be nice to be white, you know?
Yeah. Hey, that's a good deal. I'll take the deal all day long. 5 months in jail for helping destroy the country and making hundreds of millions of dollars for my troubles? Cool. Okay. That's great. Does he have to give the money back, Blue Gal?
No, I don't think so.
The Education Department proposed new federal student loan payment rules that would reduce the monthly bill for some borrowers and completely pause payments for others. Under the proposal, borrowers who make less than roughly $30,600 annually, or a family of 4 who makes less than about $62,400, wouldn't have to make monthly payments on their federal student loans. The changes would also cut monthly payments in half for borrowers who make more than those annual amounts.
So he's doing a lot of workarounds.
Yeah.
To try to make this easier while Republicans screw it up.
Yep. God bless him.
I want to talk for a minute about Jack Smith's subpoenas as well, because he released a shitload of subpoenas this week, all of which point to following the money after the election. And that's all I'm going to say about that. He's on the right track, in my opinion.
You think that'd be a headline?
I saw it on Twitter, but I didn't see it anywhere else, because the New York Times is busy looking at the both-siderism of Biden's garage.
Right. The Georgia Special Grand Jury investigating coordinated attempts to unlawfully alter the outcome of the 2020 elections in the state by Trump and his allies has completed its work. And I'm waiting on tenterhooks to find out what they have decided to do and whether or not they've decided to actually prosecute this son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. J.B. Pritzker was inaugurated this week, and I had 2 tickets, and Driftglass gave Junior Dude his ticket. Thank you, Driftglass. That was nice of you.
You're welcome.
The address was, as the kids say, fire. There was a joke at the beginning of his inaugural address where he says, I saw in Republican areas of the state these signs that said fire Pritzker.
Yeah.
And my kids told me, fire's a good thing. When you're fire, that's a good thing. So thank you to all the Republicans who put those signs in their front yards.
Uh-huh.
Now, that's somebody who won by 68% of the vote.
Yeah.
Just thumbing his nose. Okay. But the speech and the things that he's looking forward to doing in his second term as governor was amazing. It's not a long address. It's on YouTube. You can go listen to it. It's great. But here's what he is looking forward to accomplishing in his second term. In the state of Illinois, universal pre-K, free college for working class families. He called out the NRA and Tucker Carlson by name in his inaugural address. Yeah. He called for a state constitutional amendment for reproductive rights in Illinois. Now, we've already codified Roe. Mm-hmm. So, that's been done. But he's talking about a constitutional amendment in the state. He said, quote, I'm a firm believer that government functions best when we look for compromise, but I'm done with the NRA having its way when it comes to mass shootings. And he signed an assault weapons ban this week in the state. I saw a number of people on Twitter and on my email talking about moving to or retiring to Illinois as a result of the assault weapons ban.
Yep.
This is a selling point for the state. People that make arguments, you can just go to Indiana and so forth. No, you're taking a moral stand against assault weapons.
Yeah, and you're taking a moral stand in favor of women's rights.
That's right.
It's not a hard sell. It's if the people who are you see them on Twitter, you see them on social media, who are just horrified that J.B. Pritzker is their governor and the fact that they couldn't get everything they wanted from Darren Bailey and that he wants to take their guns away and murder babies, and they're all threatening to go to Indiana. Go. For God's sakes. It's right across the border. Leave. Get your ass out.
Well, they're all moving to Florida. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They now see Florida as this haven of right-wing, whatever.
Yeah.
And
go.
People, I've heard people complaining about, I just wish Florida would fall. We have a very much beloved aunt in Gainesville who we love. We have listeners in Florida.
We do.
If Florida has lots and lots and lots of blue dots in a state that has lost its mind. That said, all these Republicans that are moving to Florida mean more House Democrats in other parts of the country.
That's right. And
you can only have so many red districts in Florida.
Yeah. And, who knows? Madison Cawthorn might be coming back.
He's moving to Florida.
He might find enough people who are crazy enough to put him back there.
That's the point. If you're a disgraced ex-congressman and he decided to move to Florida because that's where you're safe. In DeSantis's Florida, you're safe from whatever.
But go. Don't let us stop you.
Don't let us stop you from retiring. And if you're a retiree or someone who's looking for a place to settle, we can recommend Springfield, Illinois as a place to retire to.
We can.
It's we hardly get any snow. I mean, we get a little bit, and it gets kind of cold sometimes. South of here, it's even warmer, obviously, and there's a lot of land in Illinois south of here. If you and the thing is, I talk to people about this all the time. What do you spend your time doing? Now, if you're in California and you love the beach and you love the weather,
right,
and you love being able to ski and surf at the same time, I get it. Stay there. So if you're actually using the natural resources that are in that wonderful state, I agree. Go.
Right. Enjoy it.
You belong there. But retirees who spend their days watching Netflix and going to Target, we've got both of those things here in Springfield.
We do. And honestly, 3 hours north of here, we have a massive Great Lake and lovely beaches during the summer in the city of Chicago. Yeah, I'll give you a guided tour of Chicago. It's a great city, and there's housing prices here are cheap. Cost of living is low.
That's the thing. Housing is cheap. Yeah,
and it's and we're here, and you're right next to Lincoln's body. Come on, man, you're right next to the tomb. Come down. Speaking of which, I was wondering, just as a brief aside.
We got a great governor. We've got a liberal governor.
We got a liberal
governor. And abortion rights.
We have a Democratic supermajority in the legislature.
And a Democratic supermajority, just like California.
We're passing stuff right
now.
in the
Pot's legal here.
Yeah. Come on, man. What's wrong with you? I was wondering, Blue Gal, what you thought of the idea of a sort of Midwest-ish meetup of podcasters and bloggers.
Yeah, or listeners, too.
Yeah. Just the idea that there are actually, because do you want to talk about the Wall Street Journal for a minute or no?
Oh, well, several listeners replied to a woman who is living in Missouri, and she's writing for a Midwest beat for the Wall Street Journal and asked, who should I talk to in the Midwest? And several people said, you should talk to the Professional F podcast.
Yeah, you should.
So I wrote to her and she said she would check us out. If you are listening to this episode, Wall Street Journal Midwest Beat reporter, hi, here we are. We're two podcasters from the Midwest.
Yes.
But Driftglass wants to do a meetup, either in St. Louis or where else?
St. Louis is good. St. Louis is fine. St. Louis is 90 minutes from our home. And nothing spectacular, no balloons or elephants. But
no conference fees or anything like that. This would be get together for dinner. You know.
I would like to meet some of the people that I listen to and read about and admire, who are also Midwesterners who are experiencing what we've experienced, and maybe trade some notes and figure out whether to use Audacity or not, or how you do your business. But just sort of put names to faces. Yeah, that'd be great.
So if you're interested in that kind of thing, email us, proleftpodcast@gmail.com.
Let us know.
If you'd like to meet up some summer day for coffee, dinner, etc. in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is a lovely dog named the Buddha.
The Buddha.
The Buddha. The Buddha's human has told me, this is exciting, that he, the human, is running for city council in his town.
What?
Yeah, isn't that awesome? And of course, the Buddha, the dog, eats freshly poured dog food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your pets will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit the Buddha at our Facebook page or website. And you can send your internet kitty, dog, or any other pet to us. And it doesn't matter if the pet is has passed over the Rainbow Bridge or is here. We never talk about that. Mm-hmm. I've had someone ask me that this week. I have a pet that has passed away. Is it okay to send them in? Absolutely. We don't talk about that. What side of the Rainbow Bridge they're on, because internet pets are forever and are forever in our hearts. So, and in my mind, my mom is up there at the Rainbow Bridge greeting them and saying, Granny says, come in.
Mm-hmm. Come on, let's go.
Yep. She was I'll just say it frankly, she was a hoarder and she was a pet hoarder and she loved animals. And so her heaven is being in a place where there's millions and billions of animals coming in every day.
And she has named every one of them.
She's named every one of them. Mm-hmm. and made them feel safe. So that's, in my mind, that is a comforting thought to me that I stick with when I miss my mom, to say, nope, she's up at the Rainbow Bridge making sure that if they're a little disoriented or upset, that they know that they're going to be loved and cared for and taken care of. All right. That's just my little fantasy. Hey, feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job, and we love doing this podcast. Approximately 1% of our listeners support this podcast with a contribution, and you can too. See our website, proleftpod.com, for details. We've got PayPal, postal address information, Patreon. Patreon is specifically to support our No Fair Remembering Stuff activity, and we thank you for that. It's all there. All the links are there at proleftpod.com.
They're all there. Just go check it out.
Go on over and click a link. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, get someone else to listen to.
Yeah.
That's a great way to support the show.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that. And you can point them to No Fair Remembering Stuff as a less political avenue in, although we're pretty political in that podcast too. But this is really interesting about George Wallace in the 1960s. You might want to listen to it, that kind of thing. Hey, Dripglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are all sleepy and hungover from partying into the night because it was Inauguration Reception Drunken Orgy Week here in Springfield.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with a switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.